I've been looking into how AI can be used specifically by small charities. Absolutely turbocharge the amount that they can get done and help more people faster than they ever could do acting on their own, and for a fraction of the price as well. Um, I've only ever worked in very, very large charities, and so I have very little understanding really of how small charities work. And so I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes using artificial intelligence, specifically ChatGPT Plus, um, which is a paid for version of the ChatGPT AI. I'm going to give myself 40 minutes to see how much of a charity plans and documentation and all that sort of stuff I can create using this tool in that short amount of time. I've no idea what it's going to come up with or how much is going to be right, but I'm going to set this timer. I've got 40 minutes on the clock here. I'm going to speed through the bits that are irrelevant. Um, but the only prompt I'm going to give myself is that I'm creating an imaginary charity to help penguins. No idea why, plucked out of thin air. So let's go. So I'm going to start with getting it to help me sort of define the problem. And whilst it loads this, I should say I've got two tools up here. I've got ChatGPT on the left, and on the right, I'm using a note-taking website called Notion, and this is going to be kind of my notepad to flesh stuff out. Okay, so this is giving me some information here: research and planning, choosing a name, creating a mission statement, and it's going to give lots more details here about that. But what I want to do is, okay, so I'm going to pull this into. So within research and planning, I'm going to pull out all of this information, and just dump it into a page here. Okay, so I've asked it for a bit more detail on specifically what I could do to help penguins, what this charity could do. And I'm just gonna pick the first two here. So I'm gonna stop that there. So we are gonna be protecting habitats and supporting research and conservation. So I'm gonna paste that in there. So it's gonna write me one example here. Protecting penguin habitats and supporting research and conservation efforts to ensure the long-term survival of penguin populations. It's not. I want a few more examples. No, none of these are resonating too much with me. I'm going to move on from this and come back to it. So, define the legal structure of your charity. So for that, I'm not going to use this. I would just go over uh, to relevant industry pages to kind of get that advice. Business plan. Okay, let's do this. What I'm going to do. So it's going to give me a template for a business plan, and what I'll probably do is come back to this later on in the day. I suppose interesting, I'm already seeing some overlap with what it suggested previously about fundraising and things like that. So, right, I'm going to select all over the place. I'm going to select all of this. Nope, that's gone too far. I'm going to just dump that in there. There is my business plan top line information. So let's jump back out. I've got that now. Potential sources of funding. So that I'm going to come back to because funding's later. Building a team, I'm going to come that. I'll park that. Research, build partnership, park that. Right, going back up. Research and planning done. Well, not done, but you take my point. Right, choosing a name. So I'm going to ask it to list me 10 names initially. Let's see what it comes up with. Uh, Great. So I'm going to sort of dump all of these in here for future reference. But you know what? I think Penguin Care UK. Let's call it that. That sounds wholesome, doesn't it? So I'm going to take that. I'm going to rename this Penguin Care UK. Right, so we got a name, create a mission statement. Okay, we're back to this one. So it's going to come up with sort of suggest a lot of stuff there, but actually some stuff we've already said we're not going to do. So let's jump back and remind it that. So I'm going to ask it again, but sort of give it a bit of a nudge so that it doesn't start making up stuff that that the charity doesn't do. Our mission at Penguin Care UK is to protect penguin habitats and support research and conservation efforts to promote the long-term survival of penguin populations. Love it. That could work. Let's do that. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to say mission statement there. Form a board of trustees. Now, that's something I've never done before, so let's ask it. Okay, so I need a minimum of 3 trustees. Didn't know that before. Now I'm going to use Notion here I'm going to turn that into a page again. And within this, I'm going to say, I'm going to copy this list. And I'm going to turn those into a to-do list. So determine the number of trustees needed. Need a minimum of 3. You may choose to have more depending on the size. So let's say, let's make it a nice 8. So let's say I'm going to have 8. So you could dig in to try and decide what you're going to do that. Identify potential trustees, reach out. So let's just give an example here of, let's say I've found a few people that I'd be interested in reaching out to. And let's say that the person I'm going to reach out to that I've identified is, let's say they're some sort of professor or something like that. So I'm going to get it to ask me, I'm going to get it to write me a letter. Doesn't like that, so I'm going to do that. In fact, let's assume that I was writing a few letters. Cool, so I'll give this a quick scan read. Yeah, I mean, with any of the letter writing that it does, you might want to add a bit of personal flair to it, or give it some nudges to tweak it in the right direction. But it's gonna get you a good chunk of the way there, and certainly as somebody who takes a while to write a letter, this would be an absolute lifesaver to speed the process up. Okay, so we're gonna go back out here. So let's say we've had a look through there now, and then we've considered that, but we kind of need to do a bit more of this before we can move on to the next stage. So let's jump back up. So we've got our trustees registered with the Charity Commission. Let's just see what it says. Let's ask it what I need to do. It's not something I've done before. Okay, cool. So it's recommending a lot of stuff that I'm already kind of doing through this process. So at this point, I probably would, rather than use ChatGPT, I'm sure that the relevant websites would have the information that I need, and I could sort of do this bit with a bit of a Google. Set up a bank account. Yeah, again, that's going to be a similar. Don't really need AI for that. Create a website. Okay, let's have a think about this. Now, obviously, this is just a text tool. This can only output text. So you can't create a whole website with it. But what you could do is get it to create some content for you. So let's do that. Let's firstly turn this into another page. So it's going to give me a bit of information. Now I've made a couple of websites in the past, but nothing too fancy, and this will be a really helpful way of just giving you some pointers as you go through. So let's say homepage, about us. Cool. So those are some basic stuff. So let's say we've got this homepage structure. Um, let's ask it what I should have on the homepage. So it's going to have the mission statement. Great. So testimonials and stories, etc. Yeah, pretty simple stuff. Let's say that let's think about programs and activity. So now what I'm going to do, so I'm going to sort of cheat here a little bit and get it to give me some work that the charity might have already done. So kind of breaking the fourth wall of this little test slightly. So let's say that this has happened recently, and I want to have an article or a blog post about this. And for the sake of argument, let's say that I've given it a bunch of bullet points about what's happened, so it's not completely making up what's happened. I should stress that, but I've fed it a bunch of bullet points, fed it some information. It's going to write me something based off of that. Right, let's see what it comes up with. Cool. So it's going to write a bunch of stuff there. Now, this might need a bit of tweaking because I haven't fed it a bunch of stuff. I've kind of just asked it to write me a general blog about this speculative activity. But if you gave it the specific stuff, you'd be able to go backwards and be like, well, this is what had happened, and etc. etc. If you're looking for a way to support penguin conservation, we encourage you to make a donation to our charity. Your support helps fund critical research and conservation. Blah, blah, blah. Great. So let's say that now, I've gone on and used something like Squarespace or something like that. And I think when I've played around with website stuff in the past, I spent half the time, more than that probably, just figuring out what on earth I want to include on it. With this, you can see how very quickly you can flesh out the sort of to-do list of what you need to add to the site, including the content and stuff like that, and then translate that into reality pretty quick. So let's say we've set up our website now and fundraise. So um, fundraising is my background, so it's something I love. So let's see what it can come up with this. So let's assume that we're starting out, only volunteers at this point. Cool. So it's giving me a bunch of stuff here. Let's drag this all through. And I'm not going to critique this too much because I'm sort of coming at this from the angle of somebody who has no idea what they're doing and are just trying to get as much information quickly about the work that needs to be done. So let's look at compelling message first. Together we can protect penguin habitats and ensure the survival of these incredible animals for generations to come. Join us in our mission to support research and conservation efforts to rehabilitate and release sick and injured penguins back into the wild. Now it's interesting because this is where you've got to check it, because sometimes it will get stuff to creep back in that you told it that you didn't want it to do. Now I really want to see if it can come up with something like short. You think of some of the most powerful charity statements out there. They're like 5 words. So let's see what it can come up with. Cool. So you'd want to workshop some of these and play around with them, but let's pick out some favourites. Inspire a love for penguins. Quite like that. Be the voice for penguins. I quite like be the voice for penguins. Let's just go with that for the sake of it. So we are now Penguin Care UK. Be the voice for penguins. Love that. Social media. Okay, let's say. So again, I'm going to turn this into a page. Now, when you're setting up a whole charity, I'm sure you've got a million different things to worry about. So let's just give it that. Write me a basic social media plan for the first 3 months of the charity. Oh, brilliant. So actually, this is where it's great because it's going to come up with stuff that you and sometimes hadn't even anticipated. So talking about social media guidelines and creating content, I was kind of expecting it to dive straight in. But actually it's kind of, yeah, it has done what I said, which was come up with a bit more of a plan than an actual content calendar, which is the sort of thing that I was imagining. So in here it's talked about in month one doing a bit of setup, month two increasing engagement, launching a social campaign, evaluate a bit of process. So okay, let's do that. Let's follow its advice. How long have we got? 10 minutes. Ooh. Okay. So let's create, there we go. Now we've got a bit of a social to-do list. Now let's imagine, you get a volunteer in and you want to give like, right, what do I need to do? Well, there you go. There you go. So now you've got a bit of a to-do list plan. Let's maybe very quickly, for increased engagements, let's ask it to write me a content calendar. This is why I chose a penguin charity, because sometimes it comes out with great stuff like this. Share a video of a penguin waddling or swimming with a fun fact about penguins. So it's going to give you a whole load of stuff. Let's copy that in. Cool. So jumping back up. Oh. So we've got a social plan. What have we got? 7 minutes left. Oh. Organise a fundraising events. What could I pick out of here to take a look at? So I think, when you're going through this, it really depends on where do you want to start. Um, uh, what have you got set up or in anywhere already? What are the existing connections that you have, and kind of build out from there. So because you could attack this from lots of different angles, using your own experience, what you're comfortable with, what you're not, what volunteers you have on, etc., etc. I'm going to say on here though, so it's kind of acting as a bit of a focus group at this point. And again, you don't have to take this advice. But there's stuff in here I hadn't thought about a movie screening. So even giving examples like Happy Feet or March of the Penguins, followed by Q&A. I mean, gala dinner, classic. Penguin scavenger hunt, loads of ideas. Now, if you wanted to, you could pull that out into a sort of a guidance document if you wanted to, or just use or ignore its ideas. Do what you want with it. But let's create this. So let's dump a load of ideas. Let's talk about logistics. So let's ask it for a bullet point list of all the things you need to do to set up a cool. So again, we're just going to take this. dump it into here, turn that all into a to-do list. And again, some of this you're gonna have to do outside of this, but let's say I always love for QAs, you've always got to have some pre-prepped QAs to prime the audience to get things going. So let's say cool, there you go. So let's just pull those into there. Nothing worse than throwing it open to questions and then everything goes silent. I got less than 3 minutes. Right, fundraising. So we've done a bit on social media, we've done a bit on events. Uh, let's say grants. You know that you could be Googling for grants and to get this to help you write the applications, partnerships. Let's say encourage recurring donations. Cool. So it's going to give me some suggestions here. And you'll notice because I'm giving it pretty short generic prompts, it's kind of coming up with a standardized format each time where it's kind of giving me the headline of the bullet point and maybe a couple of sentences of detail. But you can scale this up or down as much as you like, drill into each one. Great. 22 seconds left. What can I do? So we've got some research and planning. We got a name. I think we're out of time. Cool. So there you have it. In 40 minutes, that absolutely flew by. Probably more for you seeing a lot of this in fast speed. But you can see in 40 minutes, we've gone through a range of stuff here, stuff that I see being asked about a lot of the time on a broad range of topics, from coming up with a real top line to-do list of what actually needs to be done to defining so let's jump back up. So from doing some of that initial research and planning, coming up with things like business plans, structures, things that people might never have done before, um, creating some to-do lists, and then working through down, so doing some of the creative stuff, coming up with names for charities, um, translating some of these ideas, these sort of bigger picture ideas and lengthier text into more pithy, translatable vision statements, mission statements, whatever you want to call it, giving advice, um, creating more to-do lists, more plans. Um, so this is really barely even scratched the surface of what ChatGPT can do. Didn't have a plan for this going into it, just wanted to treat it as a complete sort of somebody who was coming at this with an ambition, with a vision to do some good in the world, and with maybe very little experience, and see how far you can get in a short amount of time. Um, the world needs more people to be working in the charity sector and to be solving some of these problems, big and small. And I'm fascinated by how tools like this can be used to maybe help people get over that hurdle of, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before. Oh, I'm going to have to pay a lot of money to make that happen. Actually, hopefully, this demonstrates that quite quickly you can get some momentum behind things, open up understanding behind things that you had no idea how to do before. Um, it also helps to uh, you're not just Googling the things that you know you need to know. You can kind of ask it a real top line question and get it, well, tell me what I need to know. What are the sorts of questions that I should be asking about? Um, so I think it's quite exciting. Um, Feel free to drop me a message if you're interested in more of this sort of stuff. Otherwise, thank you if you've made it all the way through for watching this. And yeah, go out and give it a go.